Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to All You Can Board. I am Carlo, and as always, I'm here with my cousin Dylan. And today we are doing episode 1 in a new series here, loosely titled Games We Disagree On. And the game we're going to be talking about today that we disagree on is, of course, the Quacks of Quedlinburg. So this game came out in 2018. Most of you are probably familiar with it. Designed by Wolfgang Warsch. Might recognize him from like the Clever series of roll and write games and such. 2 to 4 player game, takes about 45 minutes. It won the Kenner Spiel the year it came out in 2018, and it's pretty highly ranked on Board Game Geek, of course. So I'm going to kick it over to Dylan here, who's going to start off telling us his sort of general thoughts. It's going to come back to me, and then we're going to go through a few little categories that we're going to talk about our separate thoughts on before we kind of give a final verdict at the end, and then you guys can all weigh in and let us know who you agree with more.
Yeah, so
tell us what you think about Quacks of Quedlinburg.
I am on the side of really liking Quacks of Quedlinburg. I think it was ranked at like number 13 or something, or it's pretty high on my top 50 of all time. So I mean, to be honest, like going into this year, especially because I haven't played as much, it's probably going to slide a bit, but it's not going to be something that just all of a sudden like pops off the top 50 or anything like that. I do really like this game, and the reason I really like it more than anything, and it doesn't come down to a specific mechanic or element of the game, it's more just the fact that it's one of the games that I have the most fun with. And I mean that in the sense that I play board games for a bunch of different reasons, and a lot of the games I really enjoy, whether it be games like Kingdom Builder, Feast for Odin, whatever, I'm focused in on like what can I do in my turn to maximize my points, to beat my opponent, to play a game that I feel is effective, that I can be proud of, whatever the case may be. Whereas Quacks, I don't feel like I play it for those specific reasons very often. Usually, there'll be games where things are going my way. I'm like, oh, I wonder how well I can have this game turn out. But generally, I'm just playing it because the act of pulling tiles from this bag randomly, seeing what comes out, having the bad luck hit you, having the good luck hit you, go in for certain powers and abilities that are different every single game you play, or generally pretty different. I still haven't gone through everything that the box offers, let alone what the expansion adds. There's always different combinations or things that you aren't going to expect, and to me that's sort of the element that I enjoy with Quacks. I have so many different games in my collection that for me this just fills the niche of like mindless fun, in the sense that like I'm not really sitting there strategizing as I play. So that's to say all that and then have the game rank so highly because of it, I think it just comes down to and not saying that you don't play board games for this reason, but for me, I think I play board games less to win and more for fun. So a game like Quacks, where anyone who comes in saying, oh, I'm going to come in with a really good strategy, I mean, it's almost, I don't want to say it's not possible, but you're going to struggle to be like, I'm going to come up with a good strategy in a push your luck game, because sometimes you can strategize as much as you want, but like even when we played Sheepy Time recently, you can plan as much as you want and just have everything not go your way, and then yes, that can be super frustrating if you're coming in with it, like the mindset of wanting to strategize, whereas me, I can sort of just turn that part of my brain off and say, this is just a fun game and let's just see how things play out this time. So it's almost a game that I'm involved in, and I'm just like, it's not simulated for me, but the luck is out of my control. So I let that the universe take hold of the wheel of that car, and then and I just control what I can control, and I have a good time along the way. The sights are really good in the car where they're driving it. So yeah, that's my thoughts really quickly on Quacks.
Cool. So I will say my thoughts on the game have changed a bit over time. I think the first time I played it, I liked it quite a bit, but my enjoyment of the game has decreased more and more with each subsequent play. It didn't make my top 50 when we did our top 50 list back in December. Honestly, it wasn't even close. It wasn't on I think I put 70 or 80 games into the random thing, the generator on PubMeeple or whatnot, and it wasn't even in that short list. And again, because I've enjoyed it less with each play, I don't think it's ever going to get anywhere near my top 50, or if I were to do a top 100, for example. And the reason is that I think the first time I played it, it felt pretty novel to me. I don't think I had ever played a bag builder, and I don't think I've played another bag builder since. I think this is the only bag building game I've played.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with others, which we'll probably talk about during the video a little bit. So that felt novel to me, and also I haven't played a ton of push your luck games. I think when I first played this was when I was kind of getting into some of the ones we were playing on Board Game Arena, like Ink and Gold and Can't Stop, which we're going to probably talk about a lot during the video. Coloretto has elements of push your luck, so there were these shorter ones. So it felt pretty novel to me, and I enjoyed it a fair amount after the first play, but I felt like every subsequent play, we've sort of like when you peel back the layers of the game more and more, I've felt more and more with each play that my decisions didn't always matter. And it's so we're going to talk about this more and definitely talk about like the randomness aspect later, but it just felt like I don't mind randomness, I don't mind bad luck and those kinds of things, but I want to see if the decisions I make come into play often through games, whether it ends up being a bad decision or I get some bad luck. But there were too often where I made a decision where it ended up not even coming into play at all in this game, and that, coupled with how long the game is what made me enjoy it less and less over time, and just feel a bit like there's less out of the game, less in the game that's in my control than I would like. But yeah, anyway, we'll leave it at that for now and get into maybe our first real talking point here.
Sure, yeah. So now we'll go to now we're just going to kind of have an open discussion here. We'll talk about a few different things, but I want to stay just really quickly on the fun aspect and talk about that briefly, because that's, to me, like the most important thing to sort of understand my side of this and to see who might agree with me, and also just sort of what I think about this genre, push your luck in general, out of the games I've played so far anyways.
Right.
So for me, like I said, there's many different reasons to play board games, but I think I hesitate to say everyone, but I would say most people, I would imagine, on some level, play a board game to have fun. If you're playing, if you don't care about having fun, well, anyways, I think that's probably a pretty safe thing to say.
Right.
And for me, push your luck games, especially Quacks, which is my favorite push your luck game, is sort of just the pinnacle of that like mindless fun, and not only in the sense that like for the people around the table having a good time that one night, but it's the type of fun that, in my experience, every time I play Quacks with someone, they want to. I shouldn't say everyone. I think there was one of your friends, that really didn't like it.
Absolutely.
But I would say like
to play it again. He hated it. Yeah.
I would say like 90% of the people I've played it with have wanted to play it again, or loved it so much that they're like, oh, like let's make that a name. I'm blank on the word.
Like
but
a mainstay.
A mainstay. I was
or whatever.
A namestay. Let's make that a namestay around this house. So making it a mainstay because it was so much fun, and because not everyone is necessarily into the same type of strategy games that we are, especially ones with a lot of rules. And I find that Quacks is one that. Another reason I like it is that not only is it fun, but it's easy to teach and while being fun. And I feel like that's a really good combination. It's the same thing we see in games like, Cubitos has a little bit more going on, but even Sheepy Time was one that doesn't have a lot of rules overhead. Can't Stop doesn't, Inking Gold doesn't, and all those games I think are just ones you just kind of sit around and you're just playing without necessarily caring who wins. Mm-hmm. You're just there for the experience. Yep. And I guess that's what I get at Quacks. And that's not the type of gamer overall that I am, but it's the type of game that I definitely like to play from time to time. And whereas like Ink and Gold is sort of like the party version of that, like sitting around, you almost don't even have to have a table in front of you necessarily.
And a lot of the time Ink and Gold gets brought to the table specifically because it accommodates higher player counts. Yeah. We're not going to choose to play Ink and Gold with 3 or 4 players.
Yeah. Whereas Quacks, I think, is one that, like, it is like you're sitting at a table, you're playing a game, but it's like, hey, do we want to, get into a strategy-heavy game? Do we want to, go head-to-head right now? Do we want to have that competition, or do we just want to, have some fun, have some beers, whatever? You don't have to have alcohol to have fun with Quacks, but maybe for some people you do. But anyway, so that's just sort of, like, the way I see it, and I guess I'm curious for you, where you said that every time you played it, you were less interested or you were liking it less. Was that at all in terms of the fun you were having, or is that because of other elements that were just hampering the experience?
So, okay, a couple things. The first thing I'll say is that with each, I've probably played it maybe 6-7 times, something like that, and I think the times when I've won, I felt like I didn't really earn the victory. There was one that I'll never forget, maybe not never, but one that specifically sticks with me. It was one of the first times you showed me we played on Tabletop Simulator, and you were in the lead the whole game. You were doing so well, and then the final round came up, and I remember it was either you basically had a 1 in 22 or 1 in 24 chance of busting by drawing, and you drew that one white 3 chip or whatever, and you busted, and you got almost no points in the final round or whatever. And I ended up getting kind of lucky and I won. And I remember thinking it was kind of unsatisfying that I won because I didn't feel like I did any, I didn't feel like I made a good play at the end. I didn't feel like I made a wise decision or a clever play to be oh yeah, I really earned that win. I was just well, Dylan just got really unlucky and then I won. And then there was another game, I don't know if it was the next game after that or a couple games after that, where I was in the lead and I got really lucky on the final turn or whatever and I ended up losing. And because it's just a push your luck game and I know it's high randomness, I wasn't like bitter or upset, but I remember thinking like it was just an unsatisfying feeling that like each time I had played, it just felt like the winner was kind of just random. Like it's just whoever gets luckier on the final round, and it's not always. I don't want to say that it was that every time, but that was a big factor for me. The other thing that I didn't like about it that I only noticed more on subsequent plays was because like we coming into this, we'd played a lot of deck building games, and in deck builders, like at the end of a round or a turn or whatever, your discard pile stays the same and you just keep drawing through your deck. So eventually when you buy cards that go into your discard pile, eventually you're going to see everything. Whereas in this game, you buy stuff, you put them into your bag, you pull some stuff out, and then at the end of the round, everything goes back in the bag. So there's chips that you buy that you might not even see. You might buy something in round 4 or 5 out of a 9-round game, and you might either never see that chip ever the entire game, or you might see it once. And that's kind of what I meant about decisions. I talked about this when we talked about Space Base in a previous video, where like I don't mind if something comes up that I put in there that gave me bad luck or something like that, but when I buy a chip and then it doesn't even come up and I don't see it, then like the turn that I spent trying to choose, do I want this chip or do I want this chip, and then it never comes up, it's like, why did I even make that choice if it didn't even factor in?
I mean, maybe it's just a metaphor for life, right? Like sometimes in life you have things come your way, you buy things, and you never use them, or
sometimes life sucks, right? And you gotta roll. Exactly. Sometimes life lets you down, like Quacks.
Maybe Quacks of Quedlinburg is just a little too real.
That's definitely what they were going for with this artwork. No, but I think that's been the biggest thing. And there was another game. I think it's the black chips where, when you compare them, you compare with other players or something to see who had the most of them, or I can't remember. And there's sometimes where you buy chips and you and another player both buy them, and then later on the end of the game comes and you're like, oh, I saw my black chip 7 times and you only saw yours like 2 times. And so there's a bit of a, not that I expect everything to be equal down the middle, but I feel like the wide range of randomness, because it's a 9-round game and because it takes upwards of, I know it says 45 minutes on the box, but I don't know if I've ever had a game of it go under an hour.
Right.
But there's just something about it that feels like too often, like too many of the decisions I made didn't even factor in, or the chips I bought didn't even come up. So like I'm not even seeing the stuff that I'm buying. I wish at the end of the round that stuff would stay out of your bag, and then you'd keep going through your bag until you emptied it all, and then everything would go back in, because then you'd at least see all the chips that you're buying.
Do you think at all? Actually, no. Before I even ask that question, I'm gonna ask a different question I wanted to ask that I just remembered. Do you think that you and I have different tolerances in board games for randomness?
For short games, not necessarily. No, I think it's when the game gets to be a certain length.
Okay.
I think it's when games get to be longer, because I think we kind of, like, we agreed a lot when we reviewed Oath, which is a very different game. We're not comparing Oath to this, to be fair.
Not yet.
But just because the element of randomness with rolling the dice and the combat, and I mentioned how I didn't like that, like, in a game with only potentially 8 turns, that, like, one battle could be determined by some bad luck or whatever, and I think you were more okay with it than me, but I think we're pretty close on that. I think
I'm okay with an Oath until that part where we get to just roll the dice. I'm okay with it because it is such a long shot, and you kind of just have to factor that into your plans, and it's a bit of a push your luck element in it. But yes, it's because I don't go into Oath expecting a random experience. I expect that I'm going into Oath and that kind of experience, that my decisions and what I ultimately, how well I play or how poorly I play, is going to determine the outcome. I feel like that's the type of experience I go into Oath expecting, whereas Quacks, I go in expecting to just want to pull my hair out some games because I'm getting such bad luck. But to me, because I go in expecting that with Quacks, I don't know how much longer I would be able to tolerate this random of a game. I feel like, if you were able to get it down to like having a 2-player game always take 45 minutes, that's fine. I think the times that I've played and it's been like an hour and a half or whatever, I'm fine with that too. But it's only because I know going in that, I'm just playing this game that is like a very high random factor. The RNG here is through the roof, and I'm okay with that if I come in knowing that is sort of just the umbrella over the entire experience. It's like, this is what it is. This is what you're signing up for with Quacks, and because it's fun to me, and more, I guess there's more hilarity. Like I can't remember a game of Quacks I've never not laughed.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
That's sort of what it's about. I sort of just lean into that, and even on that game, I know which game you're talking about. Where like, I felt like maybe I deserve the win. One could also argue that it's like, the one thing you are deciding this game about pushing your luck, maybe I just should not have pushed my luck. Maybe it was not worth it.
But 1 in 23 chance
Sure.
to pull that white chip. I don't
Sure.
think if you played that situation over 100 times, I don't think you would do things.
No,
I don't think you
but-
would say I'm gonna stay safe here when I'm like it's such a like it's like
Right.
a whatever 5% chance.
But what?
4%
But
chance
I guess
you're
if
gonna
I had thought like, even though the chances are slim, there's still a chance. So if I stop here, is Carlo far enough behind that it won't matter? Like, you can argue. There's always
Yeah.
going to be a situation where like you just like got super lucky or
Right.
unlucky. Like
Right.
you can't do anything about it.
So-
But I feel like the more you play Quacks, I feel like this way with Hearthstone too is like the more you play, the more you learn to mitigate the RNG and you get better at it, so that you can never stop the game where you just in any card game where you're drawing from a deck. Or you could play Magic and all your lands are on the bottom. Like there's gonna be some elements you can never stop, but you learn the more you play a random game how to mitigate it as much as possible, or when and to push, when to not push, or whatever. That you do get better as you go, and
Yeah.
maybe that helps, but.
It's just those end game situations. It's that 3 white chip that so often was the bane of some that was a lot of the time what ended up pushing it into that realm of like that was too much randomness for me, especially that late in the game. But what I wanted to ask you is when we talk about that level of randomness, if this was like an hour and a half long game or 2 hour long game, would that be too long for the random? Like, does this hit the sweet spot, or can you think of like? If it was a slightly more advanced game and still was this random, like, do you have a tolerance or a threshold where then you'd say, like, okay, here is where it becomes too long of a game for how random it is? Like, is this kind of the cutoff, or?
I feel like I haven't played this with 4 and the physical version,
Right.
And with all the fiddliness of the pieces and setting up and everything, which is honestly my least favorite part of Quacks.
Yeah,
you just
yeah.
sort of deal with it. I feel like that might start to feel too long, but it depends on the audience too, because again, I think part of what I like with Quacks is that I don't just bring it out to necessarily play on any game night.
Yeah,
I feel like the
right.
most successful games of Quacks I had were there was a couple tabletop simulator ones,
Yeah.
but also the times I played the physical copy with people that, or I want to say people who just like this type of like randomness or don't like strategy, but on those specific nights or that specific day or whatever, that's the like I'm down for a game, but I don't want to think, or
Just something fun that you can chat about, and you don't have to be too like involved in like staring down and figuring out every possible
And because those are where my memories are coming from. My memories of Quacks are in situations where it was just the right game for that moment, where it's like the person didn't want to think, or I didn't want to think, or it was just you want to be doing something, but it needs to be a little bit mindless because no one's super attentive, whatever. Because those were it was the perfect situation for a game like Quacks, or it could have been if we had Sheepy Time or Cubey Tips or whatever, that it just landed so well that now my memories are so positive with it that it ends up pushing the game up the rankings. Because what I end up, how I rank my games a lot of the times is just based on memories and experience.
Level of enjoyment.
And so
speaking.
Quacks always ends up, reminding me how much I enjoyed this game because those particular sessions were enjoyable.
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe that has something to do with it too. Not that I'm saying that you've like played with the wrong people or anything, but
no, I hear
but
you.
just like maybe maybe Quacks is a game meant to have like like maybe part of being good at Quacks is also being good at deciding when to take Quacks off the shelf and play it.
Yes.
Right? Like
yeah,
maybe
definitely
that's part of the experience is like you have to, as the owner of Quacks, it now becomes your responsibility to not only know the rules and teach people, but also to know if that's the game
who's
you should
your
recommend.
target audience. Yeah.
Right?
And I will say, like, we've talked about this might have also come up in a previous video, but I almost wish I hadn't played it as many times as I had, because I think the fact that I played it 5 or 6 times, the first 5 or 6 times I played it was all in the span of like a few months after you taught us on Tabletop Simulator, because the next time I was playing games with someone requested it, and then someone else was like, oh, we had really fun playing Quacks at the time, we should play it again. I think I mentioned I was ready to teach people like El Grande and Le Havre and all these other games that I was looking forward to, and we just kept playing Quacks, and I felt like I was like wanting to, like I went into the last couple plays of it, or a couple of those, like not really wanting to play it as it is, so like there could be a bit of a bias there, and I think if I had played it once or twice and then not played it for a few months, I would have been more eager to come back and see like, oh, what other kind of like books or spells are there, and like I would have enjoyed exploring that a little more. But I think playing especially just the base game that many times close together made me feel like I'm kind of seeing the same stuff, and I don't know.
Do you think if I like brought it over, one evening and me, you, and Anna all played, that it would like because has she ever played it?
I don't think so. No, not yet.
Right. So I don't know if she would like it or not, but
she might. I think she would. I think she would enjoy it enough. I don't think it'd become one of her favorites, but I think she would enjoy it enough.
But do you think if we just like on a cool, crisp summer night with some Slurpees on the table and a baby who is staying asleep and everything like that, we just played a game of Quacks and it was her first time playing. She had a great time. Do you think that session would change your experience with Quacks?
I don't think so. I think I would probably enjoy it still, like enough, but I would probably be thinking in the back of my head, I wish we were playing Sheepy Time instead.
Right, okay.
Which we're going to get into that in a second, but I did want to add, there's two things that came to mind here. One is, at the start of the game, I found, this is something else that I noticed after a couple of plays, was that in the first round, so if you stop pushing in the cauldron and before you bust, you get the points that you're up to in that round, as well as the buying potential for the chips, right? I found, and maybe you've played the game more than I have, I think, I found that the first at least 2 or 3 rounds, maybe even 4 rounds, I don't remember, somewhere around like the third or halfway point of the game, I just would push until I would bust, because the amount of points that you would lose or not get was like so negligible, and it felt like getting the chips in there was your true way to keep pushing. So it felt like the first 3 or 4 rounds, I would just push until I would bust, and then leave the points on the table and then take the spending power and just buy the chips. Right. And I remember winning a couple games doing that, feeling like, well, the first couple rounds, then I don't have to think about when to stop. I just keep going until I bust, and it worked out pretty well. Have you found that to be the case too?
The only time I've seen that happen is when you've done that in the games that I've played. But I will say, the only thing I'll say against that is, like, for sure, I think that's a viable route to go. But a lot of games I've played of Quacks, I would say most of them, the scores have been really close at the end. Not maybe between all the players, but between, like, the first and second kind of thing.
And so sometimes leaving those on the table.
Yeah, even though it's only a few points, it's the same thing with a lot of games where, like, sometimes you might not look back and be like, oh, like, I missed it on those 3 points, but like, if you actually keep track, I would almost want to try, like, next time we play or whatever, and someone's doing that strategy, like, 70 points they miss out on in total, just to kind of get an idea at the end of the game, like, hey, how much did this affect or not affect?
Yeah,
I don't know for sure, but it's just like, it is one of those things that I know that if the games have been close, so maybe you missing out on like 4 points or whatever, it might actually have been the difference between a tie or a win or whatever, right? But,
okay. Yeah. One other thing is, so when at the start of the game, you have the books or the spells out, so there's other and like some deck builders find a way around this and other ones don't. Like something like Dune Imperium, where you have a market row of cards that you're buying from. Once you buy one, it disappears. Yeah. Dominion, everyone can buy the same cards kind of thing. So this is more similar to Dominion because all the chips are available to everyone. Yeah. So sometimes based on the cost of the chips, let's say you and I have the same number to spend in a round. A lot of the time early on, I find if I could buy, let's say, like 1 chip for 12, like let's say I have 12 and I could buy 1 really good chip for 12 or 10 or whatever, or I can buy 2 chips that are going to be like 7 and 5, I found that most times, a lot of the time at least, it made more sense to buy more chips, because the more chips you're adding into your bag, the higher chance you're going to pull the more valuable chips, right? Like you have your basic ones in the bag. So usually when it was like I could buy 1 really good one or 2 not as good ones, it almost felt, it wasn't like, I'm not saying it was automatic every time, but I found most people playing would default to, oh, I'll take the option that involves buying more chips because then I'm putting more chips into the bag.
I feel like,
and that kind of felt like it was limiting my decision. I'm like, I want that good chip, but why would I buy 1 if I can buy 2?
Right.
But that was something I wasn't crazy about.
But again, you could also say then early on, if you just buy the 1, if we buy the 1 more expensive chip in the early rounds because it's the one you want more, and you have more chance to get the white chips out. If you don't care as much about busting because you're just like playing the strategy of just pushing, that would be the time to just get the ones you want before you start loading up, because you
have a higher chance of getting that 1 rather than getting the 2 because you're not overloading your bag.
But there are multiple ways to go about it. Like I've had games where, like, in the early first couple of buying phases, I'm buying as many chips as I can afford, or the 2 chips each time to put in the bag just to get more in there. But then you quickly want to slow down because now you don't want to just overload it with chips that you may be like, oh yeah, that's not white, but it's also not what I want. And also, I will say that there are so many different abilities on some of the chips that sometimes, like, the ability that you have associated with green or whatever will impact when or if you buy them, depending on what it's in conjunction with.
Or there could be other chips that synergize with them or don't or whatever.
And I do like the player interaction that sometimes comes with I think it's the black chips where whoever's the first person to buy a black chip, suddenly the pressure is on for everyone else to respond. Otherwise, that one person's gonna every time it comes out is gonna get the benefits of it.
Right.
So that kind of forces everyone to say like.
But if they pull it from the bag, they could buy these chips and maybe they never even come up.
If you draw your card from a deck, right? Like,
but eventually you'll get through there.
You might lose before you do. Let's be honest though, is the real reason that you aren't as big a fan of Quacks is because there's no way to thin your bag?
That's a good question. And
actually, legitimately, if there was tons of powers on the books that involved when you draw something, you can remove a chip from your bag. Maybe not always white. Maybe it has to be like another color, whatever. Right. Would that increase your enjoyment of the game?
Oh, no doubt. Absolutely. It wouldn't make me love the game, but I would definitely enjoy it more. Yeah.
So maybe you want to,
in games where you have a starting, bag, deck, whatever, and you can buy things to add in. I think like the most successful games in that usually are the ones that allow you to use those new things you bought. We talked about that as a big strength of Quest for El Dorado, because it's such a small deck of cards and you run through them and you're just like, you buy a card and you'll use it like 12 times that game.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes, I've already mentioned, you buy stuff and it doesn't come up here and it's just a little unsatisfying.
I think it would be cool to thin your bag. I understand why they maybe strayed away from it, because everyone would thin the white chips and suddenly it becomes you can't bust.
I think it would also slow the game down to what you're looking, or you're dumping everything out of your bag, sorting through pieces to put one off the side, and then picking everything up and putting it back. Like I think it would just slow things.
I find that there are especially with the expansion too, because it adds more abilities. But obviously, you want the base game to be successful on itself.
Right.
I find that there are still some limited ways to mitigate you drawing the wrong white tile. Like maybe in that situation where I drew the 3, maybe what I should have done is gone into that round with my potion ready, so that I could have negated that or whatever the case may be. So there are a couple ways that you can kind of have these fail safes in case things get really unlucky. And maybe part of the problem I've had is that I've often neglected and left my potion empty, being like, I don't need that or whatever. And then again, to situations where I have no fail safe, maybe I just need to play a little bit safer in Quacks sometimes. I don't know, but out of and I know one of these you've only played once, but just out of curiosity, then, because these 3 games have a lot in common, out of Quacks, Sheepy Time, and Cubitos, which one do you enjoy the most? And I know you've played Quacks the most.
Yeah, I've played Quacks the most by far. Cubitos and Sheepy Time I've both played only once. Yeah. So far, so far I definitely like Sheepy Time the most. Okay. By a fair margin too. I remember the way I felt about Quacks when I first played it. I definitely enjoyed Sheepy Time more when we played it the other night for the first time. Okay. And I know I enjoyed it more than Cubitos as well. I don't know where I stand between Cubitos and Quacks, because I've only played Cubitos the one time, and I remember I got super lucky and you got really unlucky. It felt like especially unbalanced. But I think to me, Sheepy Time felt like a more interesting game and a more satisfying game that still had that push your luck, but made me feel like the decisions I was making along the way came into play a little more. And I think personally that I'm going to enjoy the replay value of Sheepy Time more, but again, that is after only one play saying that. What about you? I know. Sorry, I know you like this one more, but what about?
And it's funny because I've played Cubitos twice, and I've played Sheepy Time just once. I'd have to play Cubitos again, because it's been a while since I played it. I think I might like Cubitos a little bit better than Sheepy Time, but I like both a decent amount. I think they might even flip-flop depending which one I played more recently.
But you like this one quite a bit more than those, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And I also just have fond memories with it now already, so I think that's a tribute into it. The last thing I'm going to say as part of this, and then I'll be ready for my closing. I don't think I have anything else to say here, but I do want to ask you one question, and that is, I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this. And this is a legitimate question.
This is one of these put Carlo on the spot questions?
It is putting you on the spot, but it's a legitimate question.
I love it. Bring it on.
How much do you think let's use your top 50 as an example, right? Okay. How much do you think other people play into where you rank games? And what I mean by that is, if you play a game like Agricola, right? And let's say the first 10 times you played it, you played with a few different people multiple times, and everyone you played it with hated it, right? And you were enjoying it, but everyone else disliked it. Do you think that's going to affect where it ranks? And I ask that because Quacks is ranked highly as a family game and is viewed as a family game by a lot of people because it's approachable for kids, because it can be a little bit mindless. You're just pulling out of the bag and the kids will be excited about what did I pull and all that kind of stuff, right? So my theorizing here is like, the question I have for you is like, let's say Rio's like 9 years old or whatever, right? And you introduce Quacks and he loves it and he just wants to play it all the time. And you guys are constantly playing it. Is that going to affect it where you hate it even more because you're having to play a bunch, or seeing the enjoyment and then because other people around you are loving it so much and it's a board game, are you going to have it improve? Like, I'm just curious because of the family aspect, question. Whether that would affect it for you.
So it's tough to say. I think if I were to play it with someone like that, like if I were to play it with Rio when he grows up, or if someone I knew really liked it and wanted to play this all the time and I knew they really enjoyed it, like, I don't dislike the game, so I would play, like, I would definitely be open to playing and say, like, yeah, sure, let's play Quacks sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think I would be, for lack of a better, I wouldn't be, like, sitting through it for them, but, like, I don't think playing it with them would improve my enjoyment or my opinion of the game. Okay. I could probably get some added, like, yes, I would enjoy playing it with my son more than I would enjoy playing it with you, probably.
Right, yeah.
In the sense that, like, because I would probably see his face, like he would probably be way happier playing it than you would, right? So just seeing that would probably like add to the enjoyment a bit. Or if it was like, hey, we're having family game night and we were specifically playing games like this and like, Ticket to Ride and some more kind of like laid back games, I could probably, and that's I think where I, like, if I am going to play it again, if and when I am, those are the types of settings I would like to play it in. Right. Is when it's like, yeah, I'm playing it because I know someone else really likes it and it's like hits all the right notes for them and I'm happy to play it with them.
And then you're going to have nostalgia attached to it. And that's a deadly thing because nostalgia can very quickly replace how you actually feel about something. I know this with video games and stuff. So suddenly if you have all these really fun, amazing family moments of playing Quacks, suddenly you could like be 5 years after that, you'd be like, oh man, all those nights playing Quacks. And suddenly you're going to be like, my top 50 number 6 is going to be a shock to some.
Here's the thing. I could see the fond memories boosting my overall like thoughts on the game, but I don't like, or my experiences with it, but I don't think I would ever think that the game is better from having played it, if that makes sense. Like, I might enjoy playing it more, but I don't think playing it more is ever going to make me think like, oh man, this game's actually better than I thought. Like, I could probably just, I think, and maybe you, like you said, I just need to play it with the right group so that I enjoy it a little more.
But maybe it could, like, I almost wonder if it could, and only because sometimes I'll admit this, like, we can be limited sometimes in our scope of, like, trying to say, is this a good game or is this a bad game in our opinion, because maybe the game is not particularly marketed to us, and whether it's because it's a family game or whether it's because a genre that we don't often gravitate towards, that maybe a game like Quacks only shines for some people in a family setting. And so what you've been missing with Quacks, or with use any family game here, right, that you maybe are like, it's okay, but it's a little hollow, is it's meant to be played around the table where a bunch of people are laughing, you have all these memories associated with it, and it's less about who won and all this stuff. It's just about the memories that you're forming, and like maybe that's the case, right?
But there's games that are even lighter than this that I enjoy a lot. Like, again, so let's talk about the comparable quickly, the quick short pusher luck games. Like, there's less strategy in Colorado and Can't Stop and Ink and Gold. Like, these are even more family games, like even lighter, but I like those more because of how quickly they play and how they don't, like,
you just want family game night to be over.
No, it's not. No. I would rather play 10 shorter family games than play like 2 longer ones or whatever, something that took this long. So it's not that I want family game night to be over. It's that I would rather play Can't Stop, Ink and Gold, and Colorado. Like, if all 3 of those took an hour to an hour and a half, which is longer or the same amount of time of Quacks, I would rather play each of those than to play like one game of Quacks. And the other thing I'll quickly say is, if, let's say I was playing with Rio, and let's say he was in the lead and he got unlucky and busted on that last round, then I won, I would feel like worse doing that to my own son than I would to you. So, like, it could even go the other way. And then when you ask about if I would, like, if playing a game with people who don't like it, like, because I know what you mean, because we played this with, like I said, with Nathan once, and he hated the game. But I've played Agricola with people who didn't like it at all, or who were indifferent towards it. I've shown Race to the Galaxy to multiple people who were like, I played it with Anna, I played it with her sister Augusta. They didn't really care for it much. I've played Carcassonne with people who were just indifferent towards it, and like, these are some of my favorite games of all time. So I think as soon as I find people who do like it enough, there can be, 90% of the people I know can hate the game, but as long as I have someone to play it with, I'm not going to think worse of the game just because certain other people didn't like it.
Right, that's fair.
But yeah, one other comparable I want to make to this, one other game real quick, because it's the same designer, Taverns of Tiefenthal. So it came out around the same time. It's a deck building game instead of bag building, but has a similar push your luck thing. And I know most people I've asked or I've seen talk about these games does prefer Quacks of Quedlinburg. I prefer Taverns of Tiefenthal. I found it much more enjoyable, the way the deck building works, the way you're modifying your board and flipping these things over and kind of building your tavern. For the length of game and the complexity of the rules, it feels more satisfying for what it offers, whereas this feels like... I want to be careful because I don't want to sound like I'm trashing the game too much. Like, I know we disagree on it, but it's partially because you had it number 13 on your... But I'm not. I don't hate the game, but in some ways it feels like almost like a fancy, more glorified, more complicated, like... I don't want to just say it's like rolling dice, but like... Yeah, it's a randomness generator that is like overcomplicated kind of thing. Like, it's almost like, think of what, like... This might be a random thing to throw out now for people who aren't, but like it's almost like a glorified Sky Cup. In a way, there's gonna be a lot of the choices you made, yeah, and
so many people are gonna be like,
you have questions about Sky Cup. We can't get into in this video right now. You can ask in the comments, and we can tell you. We can refer you back to a previous video.
It's not because it would be like rolling dice if you could every single turn customize your die faces.
Yeah,
there's a chance you might not
That's...
land on that die face, but the more you customize and then you add to, the better chances you have, kind of thing.
But then you might customize it, and you might just roll in and never land on it. Yeah, exactly.
That's always sort of the risk, I guess, with anything that's like heavy RNG focus or whatever, where you can't control, you can't control it. It just, there's a chance that you can plan perfectly, and yet if you were drawing from a deck or whatever, like, the card you want to be on the very, very bottom, and you're like, well, this game's gonna be a bust. I've had that happen in different card games, right? So
yeah, and that can happen in Pandemic too, the way the cards are laid out and stuff.
So I know what you're like. It definitely is a very high random game. I guess. For me, it's like I want to have one of those games in my collection high on my list, and when I come back to it, as long as I enjoy it, because I find I have so much fun with the right people playing that game around the table. And I would say, like, out of all the games we played like together, I've enjoyed them all, and out of all the games I played at Quacks, there may have been like one that I didn't, and that was mostly because it was in the physical version, and it takes a long time to set up, which I will be like the first to admit is like the one downside is like there's a lot of components. If you can like invest in some sort of upgrade thing that already has them all separated or something, I don't even know. There's probably no good way for how many components there are in this game.
Right.
But anyways, it just I like if I go into a game knowing, hey, you're not gonna sit down and strategize over your turn. You're just gonna put your hand into a bag, see what you draw out, and kind of laugh and have a good time with what happens. I'm okay with that kind of experience, even if it's a slightly longer one like this, as long as I know that that's sort of just like what I'm signing up for. I need to like sign that up for that at the door and be okay with that.
Right. So out of the shorter push your luck games we talked about, again, Ink and Gold, Can't Stop, Colorado, or let's even throw Sequoia in there as one of the newer ones.
Yeah.
If you had the choice of playing just Quacks, or in that same amount of time, let's say playing whichever one of those shorter push your luck games is your favorite, or like either Quacks or like a short push your luck and For Sale, let's say, with a group, or another light filler. Like, would you rather play a short push your luck and a filler game that does something different, like an auction game, together, or would you rather just play Quacks rather than...
I think that answer would be different almost every single time.
Fair enough.
There'll be some times where I sit down and it's like with that group or what setting we're in or whatever the case may be, it's like I want to try to get as many games as we can, and also I want these people to experience multiple games that I feel like playing a variety, and there might be some where it's like, I haven't played Quacks in a while, and I really like it. I think they'll like it, and so I'm totally fine just playing just Quacks and foregoing the other ones. So I think it kind of depends for me. Like I will flip flop between those two scenarios depending on the day and the group and how I'm feeling and everything. And so I feel like one day, if you ask me, like, if I was allowed to make a top 50 every single day,
right,
just how I'm feeling, like, there might be some days where Quacks doesn't make it because I'm just like, oh,
doesn't make it?
Because I can't go for randomness. If I could change every single day based on how I'm feeling that day, like, stuff would be, like, flipping all the time, and there might be some days where I'm like, I can't even, with what I had going on today at work and stuff like that, if I have to deal with one random thing from a game, I'm going to lose my mind, right? And I don't even want to think about that type of game. So, like, maybe the thing for Quacks is, like, overall, that's how I feel about it, and that's where it ranks. But definitely, I would admit, is not a game that, like, I'm going to feel that way about all the time, because sometimes sitting down and having me plan well and having the game just say, nope, you didn't, because here's another white chip, I'm just not going to want that kind of experience, right? So I think it just changes for me a lot.
Okay. And so where would you rank Taverns of Thiefenthal compared, or not rank, but like how did you like Taverns compared to this, just because they came out around a similar time and he was clearly going for a similar feel with these games?
I like it. I like Taverns a lot. It's been a while since I played it, but whereas going to Quacks, I feel like I'm just going in for the random experience. Taverns is also trying to be like more
more of a strategy game, even if it's a lighter one. But
for sure, and not that that's bad to necessarily mix those two, but I feel like, again, you'd have to I feel like the more strategy you inject into a game, even if the randomness depletes because of that, the more potential for frustration there is, because then you're even doing more strategy and more planning, and yes, there's less chances for the randomness to maybe mess things up, but when it does, it's going to feel worse because you did more planning. At least that's how that for me, that's how it would be.
Okay.
The more planning there is in the game, if I can be derailed, the more potential there is for me to be like, well, that kind of sucks. Whereas in Quacks, I've never felt that way, because I know what I'm kind of
That's fair. That's fair. And actually, okay, one other thing I want to talk about real quick is just on the topic of randomness. I should have brought this up earlier when we were talking about randomness, but because there's two different types of randomness, and I always mix the two up. There's input and output randomness, and one of them is like, let's say something like Cascadia. I think this is input randomness, is where the game gives you does something random and then gives you a choice from it. So like in Cascadia, the starting tiles that are up for grabs, for example. So you're making a choice based on random information that's been presented to you. And that I really like in games, because that makes the game different every time, because you're not always faced with the same choices, right? But then output randomness is where you do something and then, or like you make a choice and then you either like roll dice or flip a card or draw a card. And that's, I think, output randomness, where the game is reacting with a random element to a decision you've made. And that's where I don't like it as much. Or if there's going to be that, I don't want too much of it for the longer the game is. And that's where I think it comes into play, because I was thinking, why am I more okay with it in Cascadia? It's a similar length game, about an hour, because Cascadia, once you place the tile, it's not like there's some random, did the tile get placed correctly, or is it actually off your board or something? It's like, no, here are the random options, but you still pick one, and once you pick it, you know what you're getting. Whereas in here, you put stuff in your bag, and then everything is still random after that. And that's the part that I struggle with a bit. But.
Right, gotcha. Okay, so in 1 minute, give us your quick summary on why, like, what your stance is and why people should side with you.
I think Quacks of Quedlinburg is a game that makes a very good first impression with most people, especially newer gamers. I think the more and more you play it, the less, at least for myself, the less I've enjoyed it with each subsequent play. I've found that overall, once that kind of novelty or the allure of this kind of like bag building push your luck game has worn off, that I found that I just don't have much incentive to want to go back and play it a whole lot more. It's still a pleasant game, enjoyable enough that I wouldn't refuse to play it, but I'm never going to be the person to choose this. And if I was recommending other push your luck games, if you want something shorter, the ones I've mentioned already, again, Can't Stop, Coloretto, and Ink and Gold would probably be my top 3 shorter games. Or if you want a similar length push your luck game, I would recommend Sheepy Time ahead of Quacks of Quedlinburg. But it is still an impressive design. I know why it appeals to so many people. I think I've just realized with each subsequent play that it's maybe not for me as much as I thought it was after the first time I played it.
And for me, oh God, I have to start again. My minute hasn't started yet. For me, Quacks is just a really fun experience. I have fun every single time I play, and that is something that means a lot to me when I play board games. It's a high factor in where I rank games and whether I want to come back to them. And knowing that every single time I'm going to play this game, I'm going to have fun, even if that fun is not revolved around the decisions I'm making or how well I'm playing or whatever. Even if it's just me and the people I'm playing with are reacting to what's happening, the absurdity of it, the unfairness of it, whatever. Because I know that that's what I'm getting with Quacks, I tend to be okay with that. And having a game in my collection that I can always just sort of say, with this group, we just want to have fun. Let's play some Quacks or whatever, and knowing that it's going to sort of guarantee that aspect with not everyone, but with people that are okay with that as well. I think is why it ends up ranking so highly to me, and why I would advocate for picking my side here in the YouTube comments, is just because in terms of fun, I would say it ranked at 13 mostly on fun factor. for sure, there's other elements like to discuss. There's variability. There's all this kind of stuff that I really like that I come back to it for. But more than anything, it's just a really fun game to play. And it's, as much as I have fun with other games, it's hard to top the amount I've had with Quacks in the times that I've played it.
Fair enough.
All right, that is the video. So this is the key part now. You guys get to go in the comments and let us know who you agree with. Do you agree with Carlo or do you agree with me? There's obviously no right or wrong answer here because these are just two opinions, and there might be completely different opinions in the comments.
I don't say you might disagree with us, and you might actually hate the game.
Yeah.
You might like it way less than you.
Or it might be your number one game of all time, and no other game compares, right?
Yeah.
So let us know who you agree with or who you're more closely aligned with, and we'll. I wish there was a way to just like make a vote in the comments so we can just see it. How that would kind of maybe YouTube. You should add that feature.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see though.
Yeah,
and we'll do another one of these videos. The way we did this one, we put it up to our Patreon or our patrons to vote on. We'll probably do the same for the next round. We'll probably give another 5 or 6 games. So if you're one of our patrons, you'll have a chance to vote on which game you see in episode 2.
Yeah, and then you can vote in the comments on that video too, and let us know who you side with. So we'll constantly see who you align with more. We always find that interesting. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.